Fireside Tales. Hello, I'm Merlin Mililli. Welcome to my fireside. Prepare yourself for some weird tales. Weird tales indeed. I wanted to cover some major things by making this show. And one of the things I really want to explain is me. This is about telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God and Goddess. I'm a firm believer in the sacred feminine, but also a firm believer in reincarnation. And this first season of Fireside Tales, I would like to dedicate to explaining reincarnation via explaining me and how I've been reincarnated, or at least how I believe I've been reincarnated. So I'm going to be telling the truth, but truth is somewhat relative, and you really have to understand the understory, the prequel, to really understand me. So that is what I've been trying to do throughout my life, is to understand me. And I found that I understand me more via learning through who I have been and why I am me now. So, I wanted to use a quote. I'm going to go ahead and shut this off for right now. From one of my favorite guitarists, from my favorite band, and from a movie about my favorite band. And when the series is over, hopefully this will all be clear. But this is a quote from Jerry Garcia from 2017's Long Strange Trip, the movie. He obviously died in 1995, so the footage was old. It was from something else, but Scorsese put it in his 2017 film Long Strange Trip. And he is in the film saying, on film, there are things that are really weird, and I think I want to be concerned with them. And he learned that from a early point in his life. And we're going to get weird. We're going to talk about some weird things in this series, By the Fire. And they start the Long Strange Trip with a weird quote from Emily Dickinson, which I love. And the quote is, "Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but ourselves and immortality." and it's Emily Dickinson who wrote that. And I think that's an excellent description of reincarnation. And it's the first thing they show in the film The Long Strange Trip, but yet they seem to really miss the concept of reincarnation and how closely it is related to the Grateful Dead. For me, and for the Grateful Dead. Now they chose the name The Grateful Dead out of a Funkin' Wagnall's book. They describe it in the movie The Long Strange Trip. Phil Lesh describes it. And they chose it from the dictionary, but it comes from supposedly a story from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And so I'm going to tell you the story as I heard it by the fire from a deadhead. I'm a deadhead, and the reason why I wanted to look into reincarnation myself, the reason why I wanted to make this show and talk about reincarnation is kind of for the same reason Jerry sought out weird things. He said in Long Strange Trip, I quote, "This can't be all there is. There's just not enough to it. There's just not enough to it. It's not that interesting. It doesn't require enough of me. It's not a challenge. It's not enough fun." So we're going to have fun, and we're going to get weird, and we're going to learn about some old things before we learn about some new things. I hope to cover my prequel, who I've been before I cover any of me. So I would like to have season 1 be all about who I've been, my different reincarnations. And I've done extensive research on it. I'm a druid high priestess and a shaman. So I also have meditative access to the Akashic records. And I've particularly looked at my large, old, dusty, weird book in this library. And it is large and old and dusty and weird. And we're not going to start at the beginning, though, because we're going to start with the Grateful Dead. Now, I was born into this body here, as a little baby girl. My mother gave birth to me, Eileen Leone. I was born March 7th, 1973, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, to Eileen and George Deja. I was born Beth Ann Deja. I've since changed my name to Merlin Mililli. Mililli was my great-grandmother's name, and it was a matrilineal name from Sicily. And when she came here, my great-grandmother, they made her change it to her husband's name. So she did, but we lost that. So I've taken on the Mililli name, and it's available to my girls if they want it, to pass on to their girls. So it's a matrilineal name. You don't see those very often, so I wanted to preserve it by keeping it. Anyway, so about the Grateful Dead. I was born March 7th, 1973, into this body. That happens to be the exact day that Ron Charles Pigpen McKernan from the Grateful Dead died. He played harmonica, guitar, and piano, and he also sang. Now, in this movie, The Long Strange Trip, they describe the story of the Grateful Dead as being about a corpse. That is not how I heard it. It's not about a corpse. This is where people are missing the whole reincarnation concept. Pigpen's body died on March 7th, 1973. My body came out of my mother and was born into this world on March 7th, 1973. He died in Palo Alto, California. I was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut. On the same exact day, I believe we have a connection because I have weird coincidences in my life that have happened. I had really strange nightmares my whole childhood. Really, they didn't stop until I started to figure some of this out. I started listening to the Grateful Dead as a 12-year-old girl in the 1980s. Everyone else around me, all the other girls were into Madonna and U2 and Duran Duran, and I was into the Grateful Dead. Hardcore already by 12. Collecting bootleg tapes for a girl, especially that young in the 80s. That was weird. It's weird. It's not normal. It's not normal for a 12-year-old girl now, and it's not normal. It wasn't normal for a 12-year-old girl then. So, this is how I was told the story of the Grateful Dead. By a fire, from a deadhead, there was a traveler. He happened upon some people who were squabbling over a dead man's body and over his debts. They were fighting and bickering and causing commotion, but no one was praying for the man who had died. So the traveler, seeing this atrocious sight, pays the man's debts, the dead man's debts, and gives him a proper burial and says a prayer over his body and travels on. And so later in his life, he happens upon a life or death situation. And this arm comes out of nowhere and just scoops him up and saves his life. And the man, the traveler, same traveler from the beginning of the story, says to this person who saved his life, "Why did you save my life? Thank you. Thank you for saving my life. Why did you save my life?" And the person says, "I am the Grateful Dead." Now, that story in saying that the traveler was meeting the Grateful Dead, that was the person. It's a story about reincarnation. That was the person whom he paid the debts of. The dead man. Dead. And he's grateful. But now he's been reincarnated, and that's why he just felt the need to save that person's life, because he's grateful that that person saved his death. I don't know if you're following me. But the whole point is that he's not born again, like born again Christian. He's not, he didn't have a sex change, and he's not some new person now. He didn't change his identity. He didn't decide to be a different sex that he orients with. That's not it. He was reincarnated into another body. That living body came out of nowhere and saved the life of the traveler, because he's grateful to the traveler for having paid his debts and given him a proper burial and said a prayer over his grave. It's not a corpse. It's not a zombie. It's a reincarnated person. There's a lot of people that just don't get the concept. I go by Merlin because it's sort of my religious stance. Well, I had a dream a long time ago. I was ill, and these little people called themselves Atlanteans. I live here on Mount Shasta, and the Atlanteans in my dream took me under the mountain and sewed me back together with love and light. And then they told me that I'm a Merlin. And so then I was sort of reborn as a Merlin. But they told me that it was a bird, that I was a mother Merlin. And I didn't even know it had been a bird, or it was a bird, a Merlin. I just knew of the wizard. And as a druid, I followed the wizard pretty closely because he's a druid, and read, every book I could possibly get about Merlin. And then these people in my dream tell me I'm a Merlin, and then I find out it's a bird, and as I'm healing, I'm craving all these weird shellfish things, only shellfish. I just wanted shellfish, and small shellfish. And the funny thing was is I didn't realize that a Merlin was a bird of prey at all, even, and it is, and it's a seabird of prey. So shellfish is what it eats. So that's why it was weird. Anyway, so I digress, and I'm a druid, so Merlin fit, and it seems to be my station as like a order of Merlin, and it's where I am. I've been a high priestess for over 20 years, a druid high priestess, and at that point I had been a druid high priestess for over 20 years when the Atlanteans in my dream told me that I was a Merlin. So I started going by Merlin. And that's when I decided to attach the Mililli. But still, I digress. The funny thing about the druids and reincarnations, there's this woman, I believe she works at Harvard, And she writes books about druids, but she doesn't think they're real. And so she, I don't really understand her because I'm real and I'm a druid and I believe that Merlin and Arthur were also real and that their tales were suppressed and weird. And so the druids believed in reincarnation. And I was in a group online, a druid group with this woman that writes books and works at Harvard. And she just didn't quite understand that I believe in reincarnation. She thought I was saying that I was a druid high priestess in another life, which I do believe I was, but that's why I'm a druid high priestess in this life. And I tried to explain to her that I've been a druid high priestess in this life for over 30 years, and she didn't understand that. She didn't understand how I could have been one before. Like, there's a lot of people just don't seem to understand the concept, which is why I'm not sure everyone's been reincarnated. There's some theories in the spirit realm about who's been reincarnated and who hasn't. And some people think that only when you're murdered are you reincarnated, which is interesting. And I still haven't disproven that theory. So that could be one reason why people are reincarnated. But I'm pretty sure if you believe in it, then you're reincarnated. I think it's all in what you believe. If you believe you're going to heaven, you go to heaven. If you believe you're going to hell, you're going to hell. If you believe you're going to reincarnate, you're going to reincarnate. So I think there's somewhat of a limit to how many times we can reincarnate. And I honestly think I reached that limit and I came back this time to get someone from that I knew when I was a druid high priestess, which is why I have such a weird relationship with all things Arthurian and Merlin-esque. I believe I was there with the original Merlin, but that's another show. Today we're covering reincarnation and my connection with just my last life. And this is where I'm finding it real interesting now as an older person who's studied myself for many years, or at least my spirit, is each person I believed I had been fits into this weird puzzle of being born at just the right time and dying at just the right time for another person to come right in right behind them. Like, it's just really weird. Like the dates, like Pigpen's death date and my birth date are the same day. Now it says March 8th on his grave, but he did in fact, it says on his death certificate, which I saw a copy of online, March 7th. So he died the day I was born, and I believe they buried him on the 8th. But I had too many weird coincidences, and I really don't believe in coincidence because of these weird coincidences. Every time one comes up, it's just too weird. Like me being into the Dead at 12. That's weird. That's a weird coincidence. Me knowing all the words to many of the Grateful Dead songs without having actually heard them before. That's weird. That's not normal. That's a strange coincidence that I would know all the words to Operator. I've never had to look them up. I can sing them off the top of my head without any help or accompaniment or anything. I can always sing that song. I've always been able to sing that song. I know all the words to that song. Love Light. I know that song up and down and back and forth and every which way you could possibly sing it. There's just too many really strange coincidences. I had these nightmares. I used to wake up screaming. My father would have to console me. But I had these nightmares when I was a kid of driving a motorcycle, and it was blurry. I imagine I was probably drunk, but as 3-year-old me in this body, I didn't quite understand what that meant. Like, I didn't, I didn't know what drunk was because I was 3. So I'm dreaming of this blurry blob of weirdness. And driving down the 36 in California, which is scary all by itself. But then to be dreaming of it as a 3-year-old on a motorcycle, drunk, upset, a lot of people don't realize that Pigpen, Ron McKernan, had been given a death sentence. He was actually told that he was going to die around 1970, and he didn't actually die until 73, which is why they hadn't planned to have him go on the Europe 72 tour, because he wasn't supposed to make it to 72. He had this weird issue where his esophagus separated from his stomach. And another weird issue with that is that since I was a teenager, have had a hiatal hernia. I have a kink in my esophagus right there, right where the esophagus and the stomach join. I've had it my whole life as far as I know. Another strange coincidence, don't you think? So I had a weird experience in regard to Pigpen when I was at the Rainbow Gathering in Montana. While I'd been there, I heard the news that Mr. McKernan, Ron's father, died. Now, as far as I knew until that point, this was, in 2013. So, well after Pigpen died, obviously, well into my adult life, I'd already been studying Pigpen for quite some time, and all of a sudden, when Mr. McKernan, Ron's father, died, I started having these really weird dreams. And then I started piecing it all together. And I don't think there was anybody really who knew much about this besides maybe Mr. and Mrs. McKernan. Because I think the other children in the family were younger than Ron. And it's sort of a scary story. What I was having dreams of was me as a little boy with a cowboy hat on and a little vest sitting in this closet in a like a laundry area. There was a washer and a dryer in there. I was sitting on the washer and dryer and watching this weird little television. And it seems strange if the whole thing is strange. Anyway, so I'm watching this little television. I'm watching black and white cowboy something or other. That's why I got the cowboy hat on, and I might have a little play gun thing, I'm like 8 years old watching, Western stuff on television on top of the laundry in this closet. I'm closed in there. And it's a sunny day, though. It's day. I can see out through the little slots in the door. There's little slots on the door. It's like, like a closet door. And I could see what was going on, but people out in the room couldn't see me. And my mother and father, though it wasn't Mr. and Mrs. McKernan, my mother and father were there in the kitchen. Right outside the closet was the kitchen. And it was a sunny day, and all of a sudden, these two men in wife beaters, and I don't know, I think one of them might have had a bandana on, come rushing in, and they're all sweaty and yucky, and they look Mexican to me, and they're speaking Spanish, and they're yelling and being crazy, and all of a sudden they shoot both parents, both what I saw as my mother and my father. As a little 8-year-old boy watching TV, I'm terrified, and I wait till they leave and wait till I hear their vehicle leave, and I run down the street to what I believe was my friend's house, which I believe was McKernan's house. And I don't know what, the story is that everyone else knows, but this is what my little brain, my little spirit, my little soul knows. And I didn't know it. I feel like it's Pigpen's memory, but that he had it blocked, maybe by some sort of magic, by his father, by Mr. McKernan, who would have later adopted him if he wasn't his real father. But through whatever I've read, I've found only that Mr. McKernan is Ron's father, and that he was only Ron Charles McKernan. I can't find the name of these two people or their existence or anything, but I imagine it was probably for his own protection that Mr. McKernan would not want him to have that memory. Why I got it, I don't really know. But I think it's a strange coincidence that all of a sudden I start having that dream again and again and again after the day Mr. McKernan dies. So I told my husband about it at the gathering, so he knew what was kind of going on. But I was a little freaked out by this. I mean, anyone would be if that were real somewhere in some sort of setting, for an 8-year-old boy to have his parents shot to death in front of him. So I did some research on how old Ron would have been, or what year it would have been when Ron was an 8-year-old boy. And if they would have even had, washers and dryers like that, or little TVs like that, but apparently they did. And in the dream, I saw Westinghouse on them, and I heard the conversation. It's a reoccurring dream I had for a while, and the conversation that the parents, the mother and the father, my mother and father, have in that kitchen before they're shot is about, my mother's talking about Mr. Westinghouse and how she works for him. And obviously she was a maid for Mr. Westinghouse, and he probably paid her in appliances, which is why we had a washer and a dryer and a little portable television in 1950, whatever it was. And I think 1950, 1951. So that's been a source of pain and disturbance for me for a while. Excuse me. But those are some things that no one would know about. Ron Charles, they called him, the young Pigpen. And for some reason, I know those things. I knew about his girlfriend V before it was public knowledge because she was a black woman. I know that he had a part in some of the songs that they now give credit to Robert Hunter for lyrics that I believe Pigpen wrote. There wasn't another song after 1973 that had gun references or drinking references or card game references, or gambling references in them. Those were Pigpen's references, and they came from his real life because he gambled and drank and smoked, and that's who he was. He had guns. He had an extensive collection of guns. I know strangely an awful lot about guns, and I'm an excellent shot. Strange little coincidences all along the way. So I also believe that Pigpen was murdered, but in a slow way. I think somebody gave him Kentucky Fried Chicken with battery acid on it. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think it killed him. I think it killed him slowly. I think that is what separated his esophagus from his stomach. And I think he was murdered. So, now I'd like to just play for you to finish David Crosby's Deja Vu. If you can stick around. One, two, three, four. I had ever been here before, I would probably know just what to do. Don't you? If I had ever been here before, another time around the wheel, I would probably know just how to deal with all of you. And I feel like I've been here before. Feel like I've been here before, and you know, it makes me wonder what's going on under the ground. Do you know? Don't you wonder? What's going on down under you? Da da da, da da da, da da da, da 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 da. We have all been here before. We have all been here before. Well, maybe not everyone. Well, thanks for listening to my weird Fireside Tales and Deja Vu by David Crosby. Thanks, David Crosby, for Deja Vu. And I hope you understand reincarnation a little more. Join us next time, next week, same time, same place. And we'll discuss an even older life. We'll go back thousands of years next week and go back to the very first life I can remember being. So thanks for watching, and join us next week.